positive pearl, shining like the sun. A story of strength with battles won, inspiring hearts wherever she goes, with love and passion that always shows. Pongal's positive pearl.
Hello everyone, this is Pongal and welcome back to another heartfelt episode of Pongal's Positive Pulse. Today's episode is about something we all have, something we all need, and something we all struggle with: relationships. Relationships with others, and the one relationship we often forget, the one with ourselves. We live in a world filled with people, yet so often we feel misunderstood, unheard, or unseen. Over time, I've realized that relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, don't simply happen. They are created, they are nurtured, and if we are not mindful, they are also lost. Let me begin with a story from my own professional life. There was a day I had scheduled a meeting with my teachers. The time was fixed, the agenda was clear. But when I reached the meeting hall, many teachers were missing. They came, but half an hour late. At that moment, I reacted with firmness. I told them, "You'll have to wait now. Come back after my planned schedule gets over." It was a reasonable instruction as a principal, but later that evening, I noticed the faces of my teachers. They looked troubled, anxious, and when I gently asked, "Who's taking care of your children at home?" one teacher's eyes filled with tears, then another, and another. And I remember that moment vividly because that was when I realized something powerful. If one person cries, something might be wrong with them. But if many cry, is something wrong with me? When one of them asked softly, "Ma'am, why didn't you think of this before you asked us to stay back?" I felt a sharp truth pierce my heart. That day, I learned that leadership isn't about control or authority. It's about awareness, perspective, and compassion. After that experience, I made a conscious change. I started planning in advance, giving prior notice before extending time, and asking for feedback before deciding. And do you know what happened? My professional relationships grew stronger. People didn't just obey, they began to trust. That's the power of empathy in professional relationships. Then came a second learning in personal relationships. In my earlier years, I used to react immediately. If something hurt me, I'd say it right then, right there. I believed honesty was everything. But over time, I noticed something painful. My honesty often hurt others. Not because I was wrong, but because I hadn't yet learned the timing. When emotions drive words, the truth sounds like an attack. I lost people not because I didn't care, but because I didn't pause. So, I began practicing the art of silence. Not avoidance, not indifference, just silence. Now, when something hurts me, I pause. I reflect. I note it mentally. And I speak only when I'm ready to be clear and calm. This practice has changed my personal relationships completely. I speak less, but I'm heard more. I react less, but I understand more. I've learned that peace in a relationship comes not from speaking quickly, but from speaking wisely. In my relationship with society, I faced another challenge. I was too flexible, too accommodating, too willing to adjust. At first, it looked like goodness, but over time, I realized something. People take advantage of those who never say no. So I changed. I didn't become rude, I became clear. I started using fewer words but stronger ones. I started saying, this is what I can do, and this I cannot. And what surprised me was this. The moment I started setting boundaries, my image grew. My voice gained weight. My presence gained respect. That's when I realized something important. Flexibility without boundaries leads to fatigue. Boundaries with grace lead to respect. And now, the most powerful relationship of all, the one I had to rebuild within myself. There was a phase in my life when I felt unloved. I believed the world hated me. I felt like people only found faults in me, never appreciate, never understand. Everywhere I looked, I saw rejection. And slowly, without realizing it, I began attracting what I feared. I attracted more criticism, more misunderstandings, more distance. Until one day I realized the problem wasn't them, the problem was me. I was radiating the energy of lack, of self-doubt, of emotional hunger, and the world naturally reflects what you project. So I began to change the one relationship that mattered the most, the one with myself. I started speaking kindly to me. I forgave my own mistakes. I celebrated small wins. I started explaining my worth to people who didn't care to understand. And the more I valued myself, the more I began to attract people who valued me. When you change how you treat yourself, you change the kind of love you receive. That's the truth of intrapersonal relationships. Across all these experiences, I realized that relationships are not about perfection. They are about progress. Every mistake teaches you something. Every misunderstanding shows you a missing piece. Every heartbreak builds your boundaries. Every reflection expands your empathy. You learn, you unlearn, and you relearn. And with each cycle, you become wiser, kinder, and more self-aware. We've all had them, the spoiler sports. Those who criticize, gossip, resist, and drain your energy. Earlier, I used to break down. Now I look up. Because every difficult person teaches you something that easy people can't. They show you where your boundaries leak. They make you practice patience. They test your emotional fitness. The people who hurt you unknowingly shape your emotional muscles. You grow through friction. You evolve through resistance. So, I learned to stop cursing spoiler sports and start learning from them. Over the years, I realized something important. Relationships don't strengthen by accident. They grow because we grow. They evolve because we evolve. And what I'm going to share now is not philosophy. It's the truth I learned the hard way through mistakes, reflections, pain, and growth. These are the principles that change the way I relate to people at work, at home, and within myself. I learned to listen before I lead. Earlier, I used to make decisions quickly, especially professionally. But that moment with my teachers, when many of them cried, taught me something profound. When I asked who will take care of your children, their tears answered before their words did. That day, I realized that leadership is not only about instructions, it's about understanding the lives behind those instructions. Now, before I lead, I listen. Before I decide, I ask. Before I fix, I understand. Listening helped me see the human behind the role. It rebuilt trust, strengthened bonds, and softened my relationships. It rebuilt trust, strengthened bonds, and softened my leadership. I learned to pause before I speak. This has been one of my biggest personal transformations. Earlier, when something hurt me, I reacted immediately. My honesty was raw and sometimes came out at the wrong time, in the wrong way, to the wrong person. And because of my impatience to express, I lost relationships I could have preserved. And now, when I feel overwhelmed or upset, I pause. I breathe. I give myself space to cool down. I don't suppress my feelings. I simply choose the right moment to express them. This one shift has protected my energy and saved many relationships. The pause made me peaceful, and in that peace, my words found power. I learned to set boundaries with softness and clarity. For a large part of my life, I was too flexible, too adjusting, too available. People assumed I would say yes to everything. And I did because I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I was hurting myself. Slowly, I began setting boundaries. Clear, gentle, firm lines of what I can give and what I cannot. And surprisingly, my relationships did not break. They improved. People didn't see me as strict. They saw me as clear. They saw my value. They respected my time. They respected me. That's when I understood boundaries are not walls. They are self-respect expressed politely. I learned to see through others' eyes, whether it was my teachers or my colleagues or the people I love personally. I realized that everyone has a story I cannot see. Instead of asking, why are they like this? I started asking, what might they be going through? This changed my reactions. It softened my judgments. It expanded my understanding. It moved me from frustration to compassion. Seeing through others' eyes helped me respond with empathy instead of reacting with ego. Holding on to hurt was something I used to do unconsciously. I replayed incidents. I overthought reactions. I carried emotional baggage. But life taught me that forgiveness is not a gift to the other person. It's a freedom for myself. Now, when people hurt me, I forgive, not because they are right, but because I deserve peace. I learned from every incident. I observed what it taught me about trust, about boundaries, about myself. And then I move forward, not with bitterness, but with clarity. This practice saved my emotional energy and strengthened my relationship with the right people. Consistency changed my relationships more than any grand gesture ever could. My teachers trust me today, not because I'm perfect, because I'm predictable in my fairness and steady in my decisions. My personal relationships healed, not because I changed overnight, because I became consistent in silence, patience, and maturity. Consistency makes people feel safe. It makes your presence irreliable. It makes your relationship stable. It realizes that people don't need perfection from me. They need predictability. This is the deepest lesson of all. I learned to invest in myself first. There was a time I believed that nobody loved me, nobody appreciated me, nobody accepted me. And unknowingly, I attracted exactly that. Relationships that made me feel invisible. People who highlighted my faults, moments that hurt my self-worth. I didn't realize that the world mirrors the way I treat myself. So I began transforming the relationship within. I started affirming myself. I appreciated my own strength. I gave myself permission to rest, to heal, to dream again. And slowly, the world around me changed. I began attracting people who respected me, valued me, embraced my presence. The moment I loved myself, the world learned how to love me. I learned to let go of spoiler sports peacefully. Earlier, difficult people broke me. Now, they sharpen me. When someone criticizes me unfairly, I no longer take it personally. I see it as an opportunity to understand myself better. When someone tries to disturb my peace, I see it as a test of how deeply centered I am. Spoiler sports helped me grow emotionally. They taught me what I will allow and what I will not. Today, I don't fight with people. I don't argue. I don't try to prove my innocence. I simply walk away with grace. And that silent walk has given me more respect than any explanation ever has. I learned that rituals build relationships. Whether it's at home or at work, small consistent rituals have held my relationships together. A thank you message, a small appreciation, a check-in, a shared moment, a simple tradition. Rituals are emotional glue. They create belonging. They create memories. They create connection. I've seen relationships fall apart, not because of big mistakes, but because of the small rituals disappeared. But because of the disappearance of small rituals. And finally, I learned to become the relationship I want to receive. I realized that life returns what I radiate. If I want loyalty, I must be loyal. If I want respect, I must speak respectfully. If I want to love, I must love myself first. If I want peace, I must live peacefully. People respond to energy more than words. So, I decided that the best way to build a powerful relationship is to become the kind of person I wish to attract. Self-love is not selfish. It is how you refill the tank that fuels every other bond. Relationships are like gardens. They need care, consistency, and pruning. You plant kindness, you water it with understanding, and you remove the weeds of ego and impatience. When you do, you don't just grow relationships, you grow yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me on Pongal's Positive Pearls. If this episode made you reflect, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And remember, every relationship starts with the one you have with yourself. Until next time, love deeply, lead gently, and live beautifully.
Pongal's positive pearl, shining like the sun. A story of strength with battles won. Inspiring hearts wherever she goes, with love and passion that always shows. Pongal's positive pearl.